there are stories that stay with you, not because they made you feel good, but because they made you feel something profound. Stories that challenge, unsettle, and ultimately change the way you look at both fiction and the world itself. Berserk is one of those stories. It is a rare haunting piece of anime that exists on its own frequency, which is unapologetically bleak, brutally human, and quietly unforgettable. Before you sit down to watch it, it's worth understanding not just what it is, but what it asks of you as a viewer. This is not an anime to consume casually. It is not a weekend binge that leaves you smiling by the end of it. It is a slow, heavy journey into the darkest paths of the human nature, ambition, and trauma. And while it is undeniably incomplete, which means it was cut short before its full narrative can unfold, it remains as one of the most emotionally resonant anime ever produced. Here's what you need to know and what you should consider before you watch Berserk 1997. Now, the first thing we need to do is set the stage. Berserk is set in a grim medieval world where war, famine, and death are not just background details. They are the air the people in this universe breathe. There is no sense of comfort or sanctuary in this world, only fleeting moments of reprieve that exist to remind you of what can be lost. It is a place where life is cheap, loyalty is temporary, and dreams are often crushed under the weight of reality. This setting is not just a backdrop. No. It is actually a reflection of the characters themselves. Every battle, every muddy battlefield, and every dark castle mirror the internal landscapes of people who live within them. Guts, our main character, aka the central figure of the story, is shaped by this environment, molded by a life of violence and betrayal. He's not a hero in the traditional sense, so you're not gonna get your typical Superman or, I don't know, Goku. No, he's simply a survivor, a man carrying the weight of the past that is too heavy for any person to bear in this universe. Now, the realism of the world is part of what makes Berserk so affecting. It doesn't feel like fantasy, even though it does contain some fantastical elements. I mean, it honestly looks like a Grimm's fairy tale episode at times, but it's not that. Berserk feels uncomfortably real, like history refracted through a lens of myth and sorrow. From the political intrigue to the shifting alliances, the cruelty of the powerful, these things don't feel like storytelling devices. They feel like the truths and a part of the universe Berserk builds. Now, we need to also talk about the characters. They're both broken and beautiful, and at the center of Berserk are three main characters: Guts, Griffith, and Casca. Their relationship formed the emotional and philosophical core of the series, and it is through their interactions that the show explores its most difficult questions. For example, Guts is a character defined by contradiction. He's a mercenary capable of stunning violence and ruthless pragmatism, yet he is not devoid of tenderness or conscience. He himself struggles with questions of purpose and identity, and though he rarely expresses it outwardly, he seeks meaning beyond the fucking massive sword he carries. And watching him grow, suffer, and change over the course of the series is both painful but also deeply rewarding as a viewer. On the other hand, Griffith is a dreamer. He's charismatic, brilliant, and almost unnaturally beautiful, and he looks like Taylor Swift. He's the kind of person people follow without question, but his dream is absolute, and his willingness to sacrifice anything to achieve it is what makes him both compelling and terrifying as a character. His relationship with Guts is central to the story. They have a dynamic that is equal parts admiration, dependence, and also rivalry, of course. Now, Casca, who's often unfortunately overshadowed in broader discussions of the series, is its emotional backbone. She is not simply caught between the two men. She is her own person, shaped by the same brutal world and facing her own internal struggles. Her arc is one of resilience and vulnerability, and her presence provides crucial balance to the manly fueled chaos that surrounds her. And together, these characters form a triangle of tension and intimacy that slowly and inevitably fractures. The weight of their ambitions, traumas, and choices lead to one of the most devastating climaxes in anime history, and the tragedy is not just in what happens to them, it's in how inevitable it all feels. Fuck, I sound like Thanos. Now, it is important that we also mention the aesthetic and the atmosphere of this anime. From a production standpoint, Berserk 1997 is modest. The animation is limited, the budget was clearly stretched, and there are many scenes where still frames and voice acting carry the emotional weight. But rather than feeling like shortcomings, these limitations the studio had often work in the show's favor. The art direction is consistently strong, the color palette is muted, the designs are grounded, and the visual language is deliberate. The show isn't trying to impress you with flashy action sequences or intricate set pieces. It is trying to make you feel the weight of each moment, and in that, it succeeds. And perhaps the most striking aspect of the production is the soundtrack. Composed by Susumu Hirasawa, the music is haunting and otherworldly. Tracks like Guts' theme and Forces evoke a deep emotional resonance that lingers long after each episode ends. The music doesn't just accompany the scenes, it defines them, tells you how to feel when words and images fall short. Watching Berserk requires more than just attention. It requires emotional investment and willingness to confront discomfort. This is not a story about triumph over evil. It is a story about the fragility of hope, the corrosive nature of ambition, and the cost of survival. It explores what happens when people are pushed to their limits, when loyalty is tested, and when dreams collide with reality. It asks what it means to be free in a world where everything feels predetermined, and it does all of this without offering easy answers. There are scenes in this show that will sit with you for days, not because they are shocking or violent, though some scenes are, but because they reveal something uncomfortable about human nature. There is a quiet honesty in the way Berserk depicts suffering and loss. It doesn't glamorize darkness, which fans from TikTok of the show will make you believe. No, it simply refuses to look away from it. And one of the most important things to understand before watching Berserk 1997 is that it does not have a proper ending. The series adapts the Golden Age arc of the manga and stops at its most traumatic moment. There is no resolution, no epilogue, no catharsis. For many viewers, this is a source of frustration. It feels like a betrayal, an abandonment. But in a strange way, the unfinished nature of the series adds to its power. It leaves you suspended in a moment of raw emotion, forced to sit with the consequences of everything you see. There is no comfort, only memory. And if you want to know what happens next, you will need to turn to the manga. Which continues the story far beyond where anime leaves off. But even then, you wouldn't be disappointed. And of course, there were later anime adaptations who attempted to fill in those gaps, but they lacked the subtlety and the soul of this exact 1997 version. So, what do we get from all of this? Berserk is not a perfect anime. It is incomplete, technically limited, and emotionally can be overwhelming at times. But it is also deeply human. It is beautiful and in its own way honest. It doesn't lie to you, it doesn't protect you. It shows you a world that is cruel and indifferent. To watch Berserk is to engage with fiction at its most difficult. It is to recognize the pain in others, to confront your own fears, and to sit with discomfort. It is not for everyone, but for those who connect with it, it becomes something more than a story. It becomes a mirror. So before you watch, ask yourself, are you ready to feel deeply, to hurt, to question, and to remember? Because Berserk will not give you peace, but it will give you something more lasting. It will give you the truth of how cruel this world can be.